Right, quick introduction. Firstly, I'd like to say this is not a how-to video, it's more of a how I did it video, because when you watch this video, you'll see that I mess up in a lot of ways. If you're going to do this repair yourself, I'd advise you go and watch some proper luthier videos first, and maybe just check this one out just to see how it can go wrong. In the end, it's good. The repair worked, and the customer was happy. But I went the wrong way about it. Secondly, just notes on who Mike and Jamie are. So the guitar is Mike's guitar, but it's been in Jamie's possession for years. I don't know exactly how many years, maybe 4 or 5, maybe longer, I don't know. So when I refer to them, that's who I'm talking about. And finally, at the end of the video, you'll see that I discovered that the top of the guitar has been warped. Now, I've scoured through all the video footage to see whether it was my dodgy clamping which caused that warp, or whether it was warped all along due to the fact that the bridge was lifted, and I just can't tell. If I was to bet, I'm gonna bet that it was already warped and that I didn't cause it, but maybe I did. So in the end, there's still an improvement, but watch out, you might warp your guitar if you do it exactly how I did it. On with the fun. So this is the guitar before I've done any work on it, and as you can see, the bridge is lifting up. These bridges are glued on, so my plan is cut off the strings, unglue the bridge using some heat without damaging the guitar, hopefully, to get rid of the rest of the glue, scrape off all the finish underneath or whatever else is preventing it from gluing down properly, and gluing it back on. I think the most challenging thing for this is not going to be the gluing, but making it some sort of temporary clamp to clamp it on properly, because you can't just put a little heavy hooks on it or something, because it'll make the top bend and it won't glue very nicely. So there we go. So the next thing to do, now all the strings are out, is very carefully take a knife and score around the edge of this to mark out where the old one was, and also so there's a point for where the finish ends. Marvelous. I've already damaged the finish with a knife. It just flaked off. I guess there's nothing I could have done about it. I'll have to somehow, depending on how bad it is with the rest of the guitar, colour that so you can't notice it so much. If you look closely at the finish, it all looks kind of chapped, so I don't know, maybe this finish was never particularly well put on in the first place. Alright, well, finished scoring around it, and it was really only that bit that you could see the finish has got ruined, and considering the condition of the rest of the guitar, I don't think they're going to be too cheesed off if the repair works. Well, who knows, maybe the repair won't work and we'll be throwing this in the bin, I don't know. Okay, so I've masked off the area immediately around the bridge, because I'm going to be scraping it after I've heated up, and I've also made a cardboard mask so when I heat up this area with the iron later, that I don't burn the guitar itself. Also remove the saddle, because I thought I might melt that actually with the iron. And also, on the advice of the YouTube video I'm actually following, I'm going to put some greaseproof paper over the top as well. This is just to stop the iron itself getting ruined. I have no idea how long to do this for. I'm just going to do it probably a minute or so from the highest it goes. I'm just going to pause myself there. Obviously, putting the iron on at the highest setting is a very stupid thing to do. Anyone like me who has never done this before and has no experience in removing a acoustic guitar bridge using heat would of course first try the iron on its lowest setting and build up from there if the lowest didn't work. As you'll see from the rest of the video, I ruined the finish on the bridge and have to sand it off and refinish it, which, okay, so I've saved 10 minutes by not experimenting with the iron on a lower temperature, but wasted half an hour on sanding it and refinishing it. So, yep. The idea behind this is it's supposed to melt the glue between the saddle, the bridge and the top. So I'll just do it for a minute, try it, and just keep going if it doesn't come off easy. Okay, so that came off like straight away, and I've like melted a bit of the finish. So I've obviously, when you try this, put it on a low heat. It popped off super easy. You can tell the glue is just awful. Like you can see the lines on it. It's not being put in properly. And all this here, this is just the finish, which is not being scraped off when you put it. You can see the line was scored around, so no wonder it didn't stick. So what I'm going to do next is scrape off all that finish carefully. Get rid of this gunk, smooth this out, and then I'll put some good wood glue on. Getting there, I've all scraped off this area so far. It's quite easy. Just got to go really careful near to the score line. Notice this area is really rough. I mean, I know when you glue wood it's meant to be a bit rough, but it's going to be so uneven that it's just not going to make a good even surface for the glue to stick. So I'll definitely be smoothing that down to make it level at least. I was just thinking to myself how that score line makes it really easy to not scratch the bit off the bits that you don't want to scratch off, but I've slipped with a knife and just here, so I'm gonna have to find some way of fixing those bits, plus the bits that chipped off when I was scoring it. So I think I've got to find something with a similar colour and fill in so it doesn't look quite so bad. And the best way with these really thin bits is to kind of like put the knife in the score line and just pull back towards yourself. And it shouldn't be possible to slip with a knife then. Never mind. I'll just use a bit of sandpaper with my fingers to just level out this bit, not to get it smooth, but just to get it so any like chips and things were not sticking up anymore like they were from the drill holes. They're a bit rough. Next I'm gonna sand this glue residue off. I think I'm gonna run into problems here, even though it's kind of fitting quite nice into the space I've cleared out. It's I think over years this is warped. It's no longer flat against the top. So I'm gonna struggle to get the whole thing to clamp down nicely. Alright, so one of the things I mentioned was clamping it is going to be the hardest thing, because you can't just put all the heavy books on top, because it'll bend the top and it'll set all funny. And a normal type of clamp obviously just wouldn't reach, but these kind of clamps you can take them to bits and reconfigure them so instead of squeezing together they push apart instead. So my plan is to kind of get a few blocks of wood. One will go inside up, make like a kind of a letter C shape, and the clamp will push apart from this letter C shape to push this part down. Fingers crossed. What I've found is I can attach the bridge to the body quite well with some nuts and bolts that fit quite snugly into the holes. So the finish is even more ruined now, unfortunately, but never mind. But it's got a nice tight fit there. So the only thing I need to concentrate on is clamping these edges, which I'll use using the method I described before. I've had a quick look around the edge, and the scoring and the cracking is not so bad. I'm gonna try and touch that up before I glue it, but I think finding that these fit quite well and still have a good, let the holes lined up nicely, means it's quite sure even that alone will help it glue well. Never mind the edges. Okay, there's my clamp jig. Just so happens to have this weird sort of pointy shaped block of fence posts left around, but that works out perfectly. These holes are from a previous bit of scrap work. These are not needed. And I've got a nice wide bit at the top. So the idea is, goes in there. And then we'll use these clamps, now reversed, there, 2 of them, once either end, to press against the edges. That's the mock-up, except these bolts will be screwed down more, but it's not great. Well, let's see. I don't know if I can totally wreck this now, but I've sanded off the damaged finish, most of it, except for right around the that hole. I'm going to try and put some of this oil on. Fingers crossed it won't look awful. Mike, Jamie, if it does look awful, I'm sorry. You know what? That doesn't look so bad. I think I could get away with just sanding off all the finish and oiling it. That looks acceptable. Probably wouldn't even notice. So just to try and touch up those bits where we've chipped away, I've got a piece of wood that's almost the same colour. I've tested all the different pens and pencils and things to see what is the closest to the colour. I reckon that is the one, which happens to be this crude wax crayon. So I'm gonna use the wax crayon to touch up the edges, and we'll see if Jamie and Mike notice before they see this video. Right, well, that's that. I've gone and filled it in, and then I've used a razor blade to scrape away all but the very edge, because obviously wood glue is not going to stick to wax crayon, so I've put a thinner line as possible. Let's see how we go. I've improved my design a bit by adding a block of wood underneath there to raise the back, because I think this jig is just so darn heavy. I also noticed I could do a little bit more wax crayon in that area there. Okay, so one hell of a lot of sanding later, and a very light smidging of oil, and we've got something that looks like they might not notice they've ruined it. So I'm ready to glue it on now. Rather than just glue it in now, I am in the shed and it's November. It's freezing cold. I'm going to take the guitar and the jig and the glue and everything I need in the house and leave it in the house until tomorrow evening before I do the gluing, just to give the wood in the guitar a chance to get back to normal room temperature, so it's not going to expand and go crack or anything after it's glued and gone back to normal room temperature. And hopefully the glue will dry faster as well. May as well video this. In the past I've used Brasso to clean up frets, so there's the before shot, there's the stuff. Let's see how we go. I've done one fret, look a bit shiny already. For a moment I thought the Brasso wasn't going to work, but it's worked brilliant. Look at the shine on that, bling bling bling. I'm going to stick some fretboard, F1 fretboard oil on as well, just to get the fretboard really nice and clean and looking nice. Well, even if the glue job doesn't work and the guitar's ruined forever, you can't fault me for how nice the fretboard looks now. Right, well, the guitar's been in the house now for 24 hours. Done a few minor touch-ups. I've had to add a bit more wax crayon to this edge, which is now a shocking amount of wax crayon, but that's what was needed to cover up. Still plenty of space there for the glue, so I'm confident that that's not going to matter. Plus, that edge is going to get the least tension. It's this edge that needs to glue the glue to attach the hardest. I've scraped off a bit more glue residue from this, but I think it's actually soaked in. I'd have to start actually gouging out the wood to get all that glue out, so I think that's as good as it's going to get. So I'm going to use this glue, which I've used to glue the neck of my Les Paul on, and it's held on just fine. You can't see it. I'm nervous, but let's get cracking. Well, let's hope that's the correct amount. Right, got the clamps in place and it's screwed down. It's squeezing out quite a lot of glue. You missed a bit before that wasn't videoing, when there was first tons of glue squeezing out, and it was quite comical. I don't want to put the clamps too tight because I have no idea if I might kind of like burst right through the guitar, because like I obviously don't know what I'm doing, and there could be some sort of pressure somewhere that's going to just like blast it. Anyway, I'm going to clean away this glue and just look for gaps, and if there's no gaps, I think I'm just going to leave it as is. So let's test that. I've got a thin bit of card here. If it can slip under, then it's no good. It doesn't slip. It's good. It goes under a bit there. And there. I should tighten it. Just tighten the screw a bit and all that glue squeezed out, so maybe that'll sort it. Right, so I kept on increasing the pressure more and more. I've noticed the back of the guitar is just beginning to sort of bow out a little bit. So that is quite enough. We're going to leave it at that and just see how it goes. The thing can't slip. It does a little bit. But you can feel it kind of stop and sticking with the glue. This is probably what happened in the factory, which made it fall off in the first place. Oh well. So it's the day after. I've removed the main clamp, and it's not perfect. Some places it's great. Some places not so great. So we're just gonna have to string it up and see what happens. Before I do that, then I'm gonna add a couple of coats of oil to just redo the finish on this. I tell you what, that wax crayon has worked pretty well. You just can't tell. Right, it's tuned up to pitch. The strings on, all the strings are stretched out, and the bridge has stayed on, so that's brilliant. The bad news is the action is still horrible. I've got a string gauge here, and it's got a little guide on the back which says for acoustic guitars the high A should be a 1.78 millimeters, and it's like the 12th fret. Absolutely nowhere near. It's like off the scale. More than 3.5 millimeters. And of course I can't adjust that. I don't think I've done anything wrong, and the saddle is already pretty low. So I'm gonna have to do some reading and look at this. Maybe it can all be fixed with messing with the truss rod. Although I've already done a test holding down the string at both ends, and it looks pretty straight already, so I don't know what to do. Okay, well, upon closer investigation, I discovered that the top of this guitar is not flat anymore, or maybe never was flat. Was it my dodgy clamping, or was it the fact that the bridge has been lifting off at a funny angle for years and years and left in tune? Probably, I'm guessing the fact that the bridge has been lifted is going to cause it to bend down like that for ages, and that has meant that the action is really high, and I have tightened the truss rod as much as I am willing to go anymore, and it's done about 2 full turns tighter, which has helped it a bit. The action is still high, but I think it's playable. It's roughly 3 millimeters, and it was meant to be more or less 2 millimeters according to the guide. So I think I just need to clip the ends off there, and this guitar is officially finished. Except for the bowing problem, which is way beyond my capabilities, I think. Perhaps it could be somehow clamped into position for ages and steamed or something, but I'm just begging to ruin a guitar. And, you know, if you're going to give that amount of effort, maybe you could just instead work for those number of hours in the call center and earn the money and just buy a new guitar that works for like 60 quid. So it's been a week or so since I've finished the repair, and I've done some more research into it and found out that this sort of collapsing of the sound hole here can quite often go hand in hand with the bridge lifting. So one problem caused the both issues, and I don't know what it is exactly. You can kind of see here the way the fretboard is just sort of bending in and the guitar sort of collapsing in on itself. So I did do one thing which is called Rehydrating the Wood, which is where you cover the sound hole and put like a wet rag inside it for a week, and it didn't work. It's basically the same. So that's all I can do. I think getting that out needs a proper actual luthier to fix. So it's as good as it's going to get. So, in conclusion, the repair worked and I'm pleased with that. The fact that I didn't spot this other problem before I started work, that's the difference between me and a proper luthier. I think a proper luthier would have spotted that and either decided the guitar was not worth mending, or known there was a lot more work to be done, which probably should have been done while the whole thing was in pieces. So we've got, instead of having the guitar now with a ridiculously high action, now it's got a bit of a high action. So it should be just less than 2 millimeters action at the 12th fret, and it's around 3 millimeters. So it's playable, it's okay, but not at its best. And I think it's time for me to give up and give this back to Jamie. So see ya. So one last thing before I end the video, I've handed the guitar back to Jamie yesterday, and he's already had a go of it, and he's given me some really good feedback. He is very pleased with it. He says the action is fine, and it's totally transformed the guitar, so very pleased with that. I've told him that if next time he comes to restring the guitar, he should try some even lighter gauge strings, which should lower the action even further. But yeah, good result, and I'm happy that he's happy, and hopefully Mike, who is the actual owner of the guitar, when he sees it eventually will also like it. Cheers, bye.